This is like Mr. Rogers' Inception because not only is he wearing a cardigan, but I'm also wearing a cardigan. Hello everyone, my name is Olivia and welcome to a new video. Today I want to talk about all the books that are over 500 pages that are on my TBR that I'm hoping to read in 2020. Ariel over on Ariel Bissett recently made a video about how she too is afraid of long books, and I wholeheartedly relate because I much more gravitate towards shorter books because I know I can finish them very quickly, and longer books are a bigger commitment for me because I usually spend like an entire month reading a long novel like The Starless Sea, and in that month I could have read like 7 shorter books. So I very much avoid long books, but I do want to show you the books that are over 500 pages on my TBR to not only share the long books that I have to read, but to also motivate myself to read one of these a month, hopefully. Here's to hoping, maybe one every other month. So I'm not sure if I'm going to finish it all in 2020, but let's just get right into it. So the first book I have here is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Lynch. In a previous video of mine, I think I said that this is about pirates, and a lot of people told me it isn't, because I've heard some people say that Scott Lynch writes about pirates, and apparently the first book in the series is not about pirates. Apparently the first book in the series is about a heist. So that's interesting because I love heist books and I love it more than pirate books. And really all I know is that Locke Lamora is a guy who is kind of like a Robin Hood, where he steals from the rich, but rather than giving it to the poor, he keeps it for himself and his friends. And I'm just gonna read you the last line of this book to tell you what it's about, because the synopsis is very vague. I searched it up on like multiple different websites and it's just all very vague. And it says, but now a clandestine war is threatening to tear it apart, like their world, their society. Caught in a murderous game, Locke and his friends are suddenly struggling just to stay alive. So I think there's a heist in it. I truly do not know. A lot of people had to correct me about this when I was talking about it in my TBR video. Don't know a lot about it, but I'm excited nonetheless because I've heard only good things about The Lies of Locke Lamora. The next book is a book I should have finished a long time ago. It is the third book in a trilogy that I read, I think in the beginning of college, so maybe like 4 years ago, and it is The Summer Garden by Paulina Simons. This is the third book in the Bronze Horseman trilogy. The Bronze Horseman trilogy is centered around World War II. This girl lives in Russia and she falls in love with a Russian soldier, and it's just full of heartbreak and just like despair, and I've had this book on my TBR forever. It is 742 pages, and that is a lot considering it is also very small font, which I do not appreciate. But I've been eyeing this on my TBR for years and years. I just haven't gotten around to finishing it because the first 2 books in the Bronze Horseman trilogy were just very time consuming. It was a lot to focus on, and it was a time, and I know this would take me a very long time to read it, so I have not finished it yet, but I should just finish it because then I can say I finished a trilogy, which is very rare for me to do because I usually just forget about trilogies and never finish them. But I should finish The Summer Garden, but I haven't. That's why it's on this video. Anyway, the next long book that I have to read eventually at some point in my life is The Winter Sea by Susanna Kearsley. I got this because Sasha talked about this in a video of hers, and I got it like a while ago and never got around to reading it, clearly by the yellowing of the pages of the spine. This is about a girl named Carrie who I think goes to like the Scottish countryside, and she stays at a castle and she's writing this novel inspired by the history of her family and her ancestry, but then she realizes that her story is much more non-fiction than it is fiction. So she's starting to realize that she's getting glimpses into her family's past, and as she gets more glimpses into her family's past, she realizes that there was a very big betrayal that happened, and she is trying to uncover what happened, and that's all I really know. I just know it's really atmospheric. I should probably read it in the winter, considering it's the Winter Sea. I only have so much time to finish this, but I just know it's really good. I've only heard good things about this as well, so it's something that's been on my TBR forever. I just want to get around to this one soon, especially because it's currently winter. I want to read it when it's still winter. Can I hold myself to that? I don't know. I'm not a reliable person when it comes to like making plans for reading. The next book is a book that I actually got recently, and it is The Angel's Game by Carlos Ruiz Zafon, and this I previously said was a sequel to The Shadow of the Wind, but a couple of people have told me that it's not. It's published after The Shadow of the Wind, but it's technically a prequel to The Shadow of the Wind. So the more you know. Thank you for telling me, because if I ever mess up on like what a book is about or if it's a prequel or a sequel, please tell me if I'm wrong, because I would love to know like the correct information so I could relay it on to other people as well. So this is a prequel to The Shadow of the Wind, not the sequel. So this one sounds so good. It is about a man named David Martin. He is writing in like this abandoned mansion. He's a Pulp Fiction writer and he's writing this book. And it says that he's furiously tapping out story after story, becoming increasingly desperate and frustrated. So then he gets approached by this publishing company and they offer him a book deal that seems a little bit too good to be true. So then, like in Shadow of the Wind, he visits the cemetery for forgotten books, and it's like this magical like library full of these very rare books that like people don't realize still exist. And he discovers that not only the mansion that he's staying at, but the publisher that he's working at as well has some really troubling secrets that he's trying to dig deeper into and find out more about. And it just seems amazing. The Shadow of the Wind is one of my favorite books of all time. I have 3 copies of it, and I just cannot wait to dive back into this series, even though they're not really connected, but it's still interesting to see the Cemetery of Forgotten Books being connected to all these different characters. And this book is 521 pages. The font is a little tiny. We do not appreciate that. The next book I have had on my TBR forever and I have not finished it. It is a classic, and it is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I got this solely for the fact that Marcus Mumford, the lead singer of Mumford & Sons, wrote a song called Tim Shell, and it is centered around East of Eden. East of Eden is kind of like a retelling of Cain and Abel, except it's in like the deep south, and it just has a lot of like drama and despair. It's always sad when it's a John Steinbeck book, and I am actually 200 pages into this book when I started reading it in high school for fun, and it is 602 pages, well, at least for this copy. And I think I'm going to read this on audiobook. I know that's technically like cheating when I'm talking about reading long books, but audiobooks is another form of reading, so I could read these books however way I want to, and it still counts as reading the book because I'm still absorbing the story in some way or fashion. So I think I'm gonna take this out on audiobook. Hopefully the narrator is good. If the narrator annoys me, then I'm going to read it physically, but I do want to finish this because this is a classic, and I do want to see the movie as well. James Dean stars in East of Eden. I know it's a very long movie. I have it recorded already. I have it ready to see, but I want to read the book first so I could compare and contrast. So this is a classic I want to read. I did not know it was this long. That's probably why I was putting it off for so long. It's a little dense and a little boring. That's why I'm hoping to read it on audiobook. But we'll see if I can do that. We'll see if the narrator is good for East of Eden. The next book was gifted to me very recently from a viewer named Patrick, and he got me The Shape of the Ruins by Juan Gabriel Vasquez. This is a book set in Colombia. A man goes to a museum one day and he gets caught for attempting to steal this bullet-ridden suit in the museum, which is a suit that a Colombian politician was wearing before he was murdered. And as they delve deeper into this man's life and they're trying to figure out why he tried to steal the suit, they are also discovering a bunch of different conspiracies about these political killings. I saw this one day at a bookstore and the cover just reminded me of Shadow of the Wind. It gave me Shadow of the Wind vibes. It has nothing to do with Shadow of the Wind. It's not even like remotely the same as Shadow of the Wind, but it still very much interested me, and I don't think I've ever read a book set in Colombia, so I want to read this very soon. And I am happy to say that the font is normal. It is not big, It is not small, it is a decent size. So thank you so much to Patrick for getting me this book. It just seems like it's going to be a grand old time. The next long book that I'm hoping to read sometime soon, maybe in like 2021, we're just like not gonna hold myself accountable for reading all of these in 2020 because that's unrealistic and we're not setting very harsh standards onto ourselves. But the next book that I have that's over 500 pages on my TBR is Seduction, Sex, Lies, and Stardom in Howard Hughes' Hollywood by Karina Longworth. I'll be happy to report that I am finally listening to You Must Remember This. That is a podcast that literally every single person tells me I have to listen to because it is a podcast centered around old Hollywood and these like little secrets and little dramatic moments that happened and not a lot of people would know about. So the host of the podcast, Karina Longworth, wrote a book all about Howard Hughes' Hollywood. Howard Hughes was a very big director back then and he worked with a lot of famous actresses in Hollywood. I just want to read you the couple of sentences at the end of the synopsis. So Karina Longworth says, in his films, Howard Hughes commodified male desire more blatantly than any mainstream filmmaker of his time, and in turn helped produce an incredibly influential sexualized image of womanhood that has impacted American culture ever since. As a result, the story of him and the woman he encountered is about not only the murkier shades of the golden age of Hollywood, but also the ripples that still slither across today's entertainment industry and our culture in general. I haven't listened to a lot of episodes, but I have listened to like enough to understand that she knows a lot about Hollywood. She, I think, majored in film, so she knows a lot about like old Hollywood and that she has a lot of information to share with others, and I just love the way that she relays that information to her viewers, and her podcasts are just amazing, but that's for another video. I got lipstick on this, which is very like old Hollywood-esque, so I mean like whatever. But I'm excited to read this because I don't know a lot about Howard Hughes, but I do know that he's worked with many famous actresses back then. I just want to see his influence, which is mostly bad, and I just want to see how he has helped shape Hollywood for the worse. So I'm excited to see what Karina Longworth has to say. And this book there's a lot of notes and like a bibliography, so we take off a chunk of this. So taking away all of this, which is like notes and her bibliography and like her sources, it is 468 pages. This is less than 500. Should this even be in the video? Well, the book itself is 543 pages, so it still counts, but the book itself is 462 pages, so maybe I should read this one first. No, we're probably gonna read East of Eden first because I'm technically like halfway through that one. Anyway, you don't need to hear about my reading plans. Maybe I'll make like an update video. Ooh, what if I made like an update video of this video where I've read all these books and I tell you like which ones I liked and which ones I didn't like. That would be cool, like an update like long books video. Like I read all these long books that I spoke about that you didn't think I would finish, but I did. We're gonna do that. Okay, and the last book that I have is such a hunker. Let's see how many pages it is. It is 662 pages, not including the index, and it is House of Leaves. I am a decent chunk through House of Leaves. I say when I'm only like 145 pages in, I'm not a decent chunk of the way through House of Leaves. I'm afraid of this book. I'll be honest, I think this book is haunted, and I'll be even more honest and say I was ready to get rid of this book, and I'll be even more honest with that and say that I had my friend keep this at his house because I did not like its presence in my house. Me holding this book currently scares me. House of Leaves is an interesting book that I would not recommend you read. It is about a person, a fictional author who wrote House of Leaves, and it's about a character who moved into that author's apartment, I believe, after he passes away. I think that's how it was. I started this book in high school, so I don't really remember the synopsis. So he's looking through this author's like information and all these pages in his apartment, and he's trying to piece together this story. And while he is doing that, you're also getting a glimpse into House of Leaves, the book itself. And the fictional book House of Leaves is about a people who buy a house, and this guy somehow realizes that the house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. They discover this entrance to a labyrinth, and him and a bunch of buddies go into the labyrinth, and they realize that whenever you go into the labyrinth, a couple of people don't come out, and it's kind of never ending. It's like the labyrinth in Greek mythology. There's so many aspects to House of Leaves. Like sometimes there are only like a couple of words on a page, but then other times there are multiple stories happening. Like you read the regular text and then you read the footnote, which is a different story from the regular story. And then sometimes you have to use a mirror to read the book because sometimes the words are backwards. House of Leaves literally scares the shit out of me. It makes me feel severely uncomfortable, and I don't know if I'm going to finish this, I'll be honest. I might just look at the book and try and read a couple of pages and completely get rid of it and give it back to my friend if he wants to read it, or I might just straight up throw it out, because this book gave me nightmares. It made me feel like I was stuck in that house that's too big on the inside than it is on the outside. It just really unnerves me in a way that I truly cannot describe. I feel like once you start reading it, then you understand the weirdness of House of Leaves. So those are all the books that are over 500 pages on my TBR that I am hoping to read in 2020 and maybe like 2021, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish all of these in 2020. But here's to hoping, here's to being positive and to setting some pretty high but like low stakes expectations. Like Ariel, I too am afraid of long books because I am a slow reader. I only read fast because I listen to audiobooks on like 2 times speed. Hopefully I can read these books. House of Leaves, big to that one. We don't know if I'm gonna finish that one because I don't like talking about it or thinking about it or reading it. So for the other ones, I will read. I do promise I will read them. But if I'm not enjoying them, I will DNF them. So let me know if you read any of them. Let me know if you enjoyed any of them. And also let me know about the really, really big books on your TBR that you're hoping to finish this year. Because I would love to know, because I feel like we're all a little bit afraid of big books. I know some people like big books, but I'm intimidated by them. I'm intimidated by how long it takes for me to get through them. And remember, if you want to keep track of what I'm currently reading in real time, be sure to follow me over on my Instagram at Stories for Coffee. I usually update what I'm reading like every single day on my stories, so you can like see what I'm up to, what I'm getting up to, what I'm picking up, all that jazz if you're interested. And maybe you can see me updating these long books when I'm currently reading them. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!